Smile, written by Podfic 120. Read by Arashi. After spending time with Dorte, Marianne decided to take off to other parts of Garreg Mach, wondering if any assistance would be needed from her, or so. For the past 5 years, she had wondered what her reason for living was, but whether or not it was some sort of divine intervention from the goddess, she pressed on even during her darkest times. Smiling wasn't her biggest forte, despite Sylvain's training back in their academy days. Her curse whispered to her that she was undeserving of such a luxury. Why force a smile if deep down she was only suffering endlessly? Marianne could recall one moment in which she didn't have to mask herself. When Dimitri went on about how both of them felt connected in terms of surviving, whereas others weren't so fortunate enough, she elicited a smile for the very first time in so long. Finally, there was someone out there who could understand her in some way. The memories of those days brought a pang of guilt to Marianne, as it reminded her of when Dimitri would often bring a smile just enough to motivate those around him, though at the same time she pondered how many times he'd had to mask himself for everyone else's sake. The memories of those days brought a pang of guilt to Marianne, as it reminded her of when Dimitri would often bring a smile just enough to motivate those around him, though at the same time she pondered on how many times he had to mask himself for everyone's sake. As the years progressed, she was able to smile out of her own volition, thus ensuring a major step in her life, though she knew that most people would want her to embrace happiness more so than often. Truthfully enough, had it not been for the professor and Dimitri along with so many others that she truly cherished in her life, she would have greeted the open arms of the goddess long before the promised day. Marianne still had her episodes of questioning herself, though she learned to appreciate the steps that she made to get that far. One day, she would find the answer. However, it wasn't the same case for Dimitri. Marianne couldn't even recognize him the very moment they returned at the cathedral a few months ago. The once optimistic and righteous Prince of Fargus reduced to shedding his humanity for the sake of curtailing the wails of the deceased. Just like the others, she had made vain attempts in interacting with him. Dimitri had lashed out at Marianne, warning her that she should leave his presence. When she abided to his demand, she overheard him talking to someone rather somberly, though she was certain that he was talking to himself. Marianne had cried, not because of being treated in that manner, but because she couldn't help but wonder just what did he have to endure for the past 5 years to consider life as worthless and void of any other reason. There was no semblance of the Dimitri that she knew long ago. On the battlefield, Marianne noted the type of smile that Dimitri kept on as he mowed enemy after enemy, as if it invigorated his will to live. Although they were fighting a war, she had at least cared for those who lost their lives, including their enemies. Behind closed doors, she abhorred that smile of his. There was no sense of compassion or mercy emanating from it, especially the way he treated one of the imperial generals as they defended the monastery, or the knight from House Rowe. However, the smile that haunted her the most was when they discovered that Edelgard was the Flame Emperor. Dimitri's facade finally cracked as he laughed and smiled maniacally while subduing those who got in his way. Marianne tried to repress it, but it continued to etch into her memories. Morale was also at an all-time low. The Adrestian Empire had much of a foothold in their campaign, especially with the advantage of infighting from multiple houses in Fargus in the Alliance. Those who had defected from the Empire in order to join Byleth and Dimitri's forces weren't so welcome due to the fear that they couldn't be trusted despite relinquishing all ties from their home country. Marianne could tell that behind their smiles only hid a sense of doubt regarding the tides of the war. Despite the possibility of their forces gaining a chance of turning the tables of the war should they liberate Ferdiad first, Dimitri was highly focused on advancing to the imperial capital, Enbar, for the sake of enacting revenge on Edelgard, and so all of their units and resources were tapped into his mission. The War Council had no choice but to abide to Dimitri's goal, no matter how many others were vocal against it. Marianne and Hilda had spent some of their time with the children who were sheltered in the monastery, either telling stories or dining with them. In spite of the harshness of war, they had shown the children that everything would be okay. Marianne would put up a smile to ease their worries for just a little. It did hurt her to see those who have lost a parent or both because of the war, recounting a recent tragic moment in which a young boy was given the news of his parents losing their lives in the Battle of Aelel. There was a rumor going around that Dimitri happened to console the child at the cathedral. Supposedly, he patted the child on their head and even gave them a smile before going back to his musing. Given the circumstances, She found it difficult to comprehend. But maybe, just maybe, this was a glimmer of hope that his heart wasn't completely deluded by its own darkness. She yearned to see him in a state of happiness just like before. Her stroll took her to the entrance of the cathedral, deciding to offer a prayer to the goddess despite Dimitri's presence lingering in front of the ruins of the altar. At first, she hesitated, but then she noticed a small figure right by Dimitri's side. Their distance from each other wasn't too far apart, and, curiosity getting the best of her, Marianne decided to observe a bit closer. The boy appeared to be praying, his composure a bit shaky, whether it was due to being close to the tall man or of another reason. Upon closer inspection, she deduced that the boy was the same child that she consoled when he was told that his parents died in Aelel. Dimitri paid no mind to the boy and simply allowed him to pray. The exiled prince then heard a few quiet sobs coming from the child, who was silently asking the goddess why his parents had to be taken away from them so abruptly, wondering if it was his own fault. Feeling empathetic, Dimitri placed a hand on the boy's head, ruffling his hair, the boy turning in the prince's direction. Dimitri proceeded to smile weakly at the child, which was caught by Marianne's eyes. Secluding herself away from the scene by hiding behind one of the pillars, Marianne smiled happily that the rumor turned out to be true. No matter how much Dimitri had tried to deny that he was capable of being human, there was hope that all was not lost for him. She did love him dearly, after all. Not all smiles were a facade.